Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Roundup episode. So, we've seen tangible D4 progress, but for every good step there is something else, as WoW Classic China has actually deviated from actual vanilla, now offering WoW Token, an extra form of monetization, and it's one that's got many in the EU and US worried, but it is actually part of a wider story. We've also got Steam updates, Square ENIX making a lot of sense with their next-gen plans, and a bunch of Quickfire stories. So, that's what we're doing. Of course, we do 6 of these a week, so if you're down for more of that, hit that sub button, and if you'd like to help us out with the YouTube algorithm, then hit that like button, and with all that said, let's get going. Alright, so Blizzard news first. Right. China is rather different when it comes to MMORPG habits. I mean, generally, the East is pretty different. MMOs over there, while they still do have lots of gameplay, they are a bit more played with a credit card as compared to Western ones. Now, their business models, I mean, they are just a bit strange from a Western perspective, to the point where, you know, the business model of games is usually the main thing that people actually worry about when an Eastern MMO is getting ported over here. Now, even past things like cash shops, there are other aspects of MMOs that tend to be different. I mean, for the longest time, World of Warcraft was actually paid for by the hour, with NetEase rather controversially switching it over, controversially for some, to a subscription model a few years back. Now, the in-game cash shop in World of Warcraft is actually a bit larger over there as well, even having a paid XP boost potion. So, that's some Eastern MMO context, and that's the context behind Blizzard's latest announcement that WoW Token is coming to WoW Classic in China. Now, this understandably has sparked off worries for Western players in the EU and NA servers, as it is extremely, well, against the point of Classic, which is, of course, to be as close to what vanilla was back in the day. In some ways, that's more true than Blizzard would like, of course. Grey market gold selling was a thing back then, it still is a thing now for WoW Classic. The problem, though, for Blizz is they don't make any money from that grey market. Enter WoW Token. If you've got loads of gold, you can buy a token from another player on the auction house, and then you can redeem that WoW token for 30 days of game time. Alternatively, if you want gold in-game, then you can purchase a WoW token for your real money and then sell it on the auction house. Essentially, it is a more tightly regulated version of EVE Online's Plex system. The real point, though, is that the 30 days of game time costs $15 normally, but with WoW Token, it's $20. So for every, month of game time that is redeemed via WoW Token, Blizzard get an extra $5. So Blizz essentially are facilitating turning gold into game time and the opposite, and they skim their cut off the top. Which, I mean, it's not inherently an evil thing, right? It is, it is just business. EVE does it. A whole bunch of other games do it, but there are some differences for Classic. Now, in the live version of World of Warcraft, that does actually mean you can just pull out your credit card and you can get a bunch of tokens, and then you can just buy anything for gold, in the game. The modern WoW player base has mostly accepted it, and generally it is pretty accepted as a practice in other MMOs where it's done. For Classic, though, it's another kettle of fish, because it's very much against the no changes mindset that's pervasive in the community, and the Blizzard have mostly stuck to. Sure, people did buy grey market gold in vanilla, but it wasn't a core game system supported by the developer. The idea of, getting masses of gold that you could just turn into gear, that isn't really what Classic should be, I believe, and I think that is what most Classic players are going to think. And then, of course, with Blizzard cuddling up to China with the Blitzchung situation, and then generally having a pretty bad rap these days, I think many of us can see why many people would be assuming the worst here, that this WoW token change would actually come to EU and NA. Now, as for my take, if it does, then yes, that is a massive mistake by the players, and it's completely against the spirit of Classic. Will it, though? I could see it happening, right? Gold does matter a hell of a lot more in WoW Classic, so the incentive certainly would be there for players, but I do suspect that even Blizzard know, that it would just completely backfire on them. So I don't think it's going to happen, but it is a story that we will be monitoring. And still on Blizzard, we've got D4. It's a game that's still quite clearly early on, and it's one that had an interesting showing. I think it had lovely environments, but a lot of other things were a bit mixed, like the animation, some of the skills, the UI. Credit to Blizz, though, they have actually held their promise of quarterly updates for Diablo 4. So for the actual game, the TLDR is basically this. They've improved icons and UI, they've scrapped the side action bar thing, they've scrapped the item size based inventory management, they're allowing you to unbind your primary from left click and to rebind it, and then for controllers, which Diablo 3 actually played extremely well with in console, they're going to be supported on PC at launch, and they're also adding in a co-op mode with UI accommodations for that, and they top the whole thing off by showcasing some mobs, and that's actually its own story, because IGN ripped the model preview from Blizzard's YouTube, and then they reposted their own, but their original title and thumbnail claimed that it was an official teaser trailer. That's not true. It wasn't. They've since corrected, but I mean, that's like literally clickbait. Like, it literally is not the teaser trailer, which is what they said it was. What the hell were IGN smoking? What a strange situation. But overall, it's just an interesting situation. I mean, after D3 and Reaper of Souls, the ARPG genre was doing so well, especially with Path of Exile, but then Blizzard, by dropping D3 Expansion 2, completely missed out on that genre really hitting new heights. And I mean, with Path of Exile 2 being a thing in the future, there's going to be stiff competition for D4, and I just wonder, will D4 sort of lowball the complexity and end up just not being that relevant? Hopefully not, because I do actually like the Diablo franchise, and I would love D4 to be a fantastic game. Anyway, with that, let's move on. So Valve once again have been a little bit busy. Steam got some updates this week, making its search function more powerful and user-friendly. Now, this is a part of their Steam Labs experiments, which, I mean, really are one of my favorite things that Valve do, and there's more changes on the way. So right now, Steam Search will be supporting setting a max price with a new filter to only show special offers. You can then also include or exclude by tag, and tags now show a preview of how many results will actually be returned. Now, this, of course, makes it easier to see what results are the most relevant to you, then while the actual Steam relevance algorithm will now weigh in favor of your requested tags, which again is pretty good. It actually gets better though, because you can now tell Search to hide games you already know about, so that means things that are in your library or in your wish list, and you can also exclude VR-only games if you're not into that. And then finally, they've added in infinite scroll instead of, just going through pages. Overall, this is great. It shows what I think is Valve's actual strength here, and that is being really user-friendly and giving people tools. I mean, man, the Steam Labs recommender is so good. If you really dial that thing over to niche and your habits in Steam are actually reflective of what you enjoy, it is so damn good at giving you good recommendations. And now with these search tools, that's going to help people, really drill into finding the things that they want, maybe even find some hidden gems. And certainly from from the perspective of, being in a situation where we're making a niche game, the discoverability things like this that'll help fans of genres to actually find more entries in those genres that maybe don't have those massive marketing budgets, that's actually really exciting. And certainly when I see that Steam does still have that higher, the higher rev share towards them, it's, that doesn't feel great, but it's when they start making things like this, they make it a better experience for users that allow users to find games they potentially want to buy easier, then I think that's really Valve actually doing good work and sort of earning their keep a little bit more. And then next up, Square Enix have said they don't have any immediate plans to release next-generation console exclusives, and this I actually think is relevant to all of us. Now, this is because the next-gen consoles are going to support backwards compatibility very well, and that basically just means that Square Enix have decided to prioritize releasing games for both generations of consoles, and they've said that it won't be until farther down the road that they actually release next-gen exclusives. Now, we don't know how farther down the road actually means, but overall it makes sense. Think about it this way. Why build a super expensive game that is meant for brand new hardware early on? Why? The market share is going to be pretty small, and all you're really going to be doing is helping the platform holder shift units by really making the use of their hardware, exclusively. And that makes it just make far more sense to make the money now when the install base is big across all of the platforms, and then to wait until that next gen has its big install base, and then when you can make your really big, exciting, truly next gen feeling game. And actually, I think this is probably better for people who just want to play games anyway, because typically, right, whenever a new gen comes out, those launch exclusives or, those kind of launch-only games, I don't even mean for a next-gen platform, I mean just for a gen in general, they often aren't that great, right? It's usually until a few years after that we start to see the really solid games. So yeah, I actually think this is a really good thing, and we've seen similar words from other companies. I believe it's until 2022 that EA are actually, they're doing like cross-gen Battlefield. So yeah, I actually think it makes a lot of sense, and it's pretty good for consumers. The hardware that you have now is still going to be relevant into the future. And then next, a bit of Anthem. So look, they took a bit of flack for kind of missing their birthday and for their Christmas trees and for saying they're going to be easing off on updates to the game. Now, first, there was some jumping of the gun that happened here, in my opinion. So the game's anniversary is on the 22nd of February. That was a Saturday. It's not a working day. Once Tuesday rolled around, they announced, version 1.7 of the game, which obviously that would have been a scheduled thing, and that came along with the anniversary celebration, which, I mean, isn't really much of note. Being real, it still is essentially a dead game, but it's an odd situation, right? Especially for me, it's them taking flack from actually sticking to their plan of doing a revamp and not doing seasonal updates. Yes, customers are screwed over with that game, but I also do think that we all know that small seasonal updates would be utterly pointless for BioWare to do. It'd be a massive waste of time because the game is fundamentally very bad indeed. Long-term changes are absolutely needed, and they have to stick the course. So when it just comes to Anthem coverage, I think it's important to not berate them for sticking to that particular part of the plan, because that is absolutely the right way for them to develop that game, and it's the only way they even have a chance of, Anthem ever being at some stage decent. And then finally, a little bit of quickfire. So Hideo Kojima has got a BAFTA fellowship. It's going to be presented to him soon. And then we had a fun little scuffle between Epic Games and SUPERDATA. So SUPERDATA claimed that Fortnite's revenue has basically reached its lowest point since 2017. And then Epic said, no, that's false. And then SUPERDATA said, no, we don't believe you. Our method is validated, blah, blah, blah. Right now, there's actually really nothing we can read into this. It's just he said, she said, essentially. Now, that said, I think Epic do have more of a incentive to look good here than SUPERDATA. That said, for SUPERDATA, if the veracity of what they're claiming, is under question, being an analytics firm, that obviously does look really pretty darn bad for them indeed. So a developing story, though I actually don't think we're going to get hard numbers there because, Epic are a private company. They have absolutely no need to share those numbers, though you could say that if those numbers are actually good, they could clear their name by sharing them, but maybe they just aren't taking this story particularly seriously overall. Anyway, let me know what you thought about today's stories. I'd love to know for D4 especially, what direction do you think Blizzard should go in? Should they be really going for that more hardcore ARPG audience who love, say, Path of Exile 2, or should it be more of, the sort of everyman's ARPG? I'd love to know what you think, and also, WoW Classic token, do you think it's going to come over to our regions, or do you think it's just going to stay being a quirk of the Chinese World of Warcraft business model? I'd love to know, so let me know. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.